Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I read 2 days ago now on Halloween, which was very thematically appropriate as it turns out. I am talking about If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and oh boy, this was really good and I was not expecting it to be. So If We Were Villains starts with a guy named Oliver Marks coming out of jail after serving 10 years for the murder of one of his classmates from when he went to college. He has just been released after serving his full 10 years, and the detective who helped to put him in jail has just filed for retirement and so has come to visit him as he leaves prison to say that he is no longer connected to the case, but he still really wants to know what happened, because he doesn't think that Oliver did it, but he is still unsure. So he asks Oliver if he will tell him what really happened, and so Oliver decides to tell him about what happened between him and his 6 other classmates in their final year of studying drama and theatre and performance arts at this arts college in Illinois called Delica, I want to say, Delica, probably Delica. And so you are led through what it is like for them living at this arts college where drama is their life. They only perform Shakespeare as well, is the most interesting thing I think about it. The whole idea of this arts college is it's very arts college, if you know what I mean by that. They live and breathe Shakespeare, they're all constantly quoting from his plays, they're all very entangled in their roles both as thespians and their literal roles that they end up playing. And there is a lot to be said about the ways they are cast in their plays and the ways they are cast specifically in Shakespeare plays and the way they actually are as individuals. I will say there may be some spoilers in this video just because it is kind of difficult to talk about some aspects of the book without revealing who gets murdered. It's said from the off, one of the friends is found dead. I will try my best not to reveal that, but it is obviously quite important to the plot who gets killed and how they get killed and by whom. So I will do my best not to reveal that, but I will flag if there are spoilers either in the description, or I will do the classic thing of I will raise my hand while there are spoilers going on and then lower it again once they've stopped. So I feel like I need to preface this by saying I bought this on the basis that I read The Secret History this year because I am a massive nerd and I really like the dark academia aesthetic movement that has been taking over sort of Tumblr and Instagram in the last year or two, and so I bought and read The Secret History. And so when I heard If We Were Villains being talked about on those same dark academia pages I had got the love of A Secret History from, I thought, well, I shall check it out, and I thought this sounds very similar to The Secret History and just as good, so I bought it. This comparison to A Secret History influenced quite a lot of the things I took away from the book and the way I viewed the book as a whole. So if I end up doing a lot of comparisons or talking about things in the book in comparison to how they were portrayed in The Secret History, that is intentional, and unfortunately that's just how my mindset was. I don't know how I would have viewed this book had I not read The Secret History first. I think I would have been less inclined to like it, if I'm honest, because, yeah, I'm going to end up talking about The Secret History quite a lot. I had a lot to think about with The Secret History. There were many things that I enjoyed about it. I was addicted to reading it while I read it, and it is quite a chunky book, so it was a good few days of me feverishly continuing to read it. But I still don't really know if I liked it or not. I really enjoyed reading it while I was reading it, but did I like the characters? Not really, they're all pretty unpleasant. Did I like what it said as a message? I don't really know what it was trying to say. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. And so when I came across If We Were Villains, which is essentially the same pretentious assholes kill a friend trope, but with actors in an arts college rather than classicists, I was there for it. I found the parallels that this drew with Shakespeare plays so interesting. I have to say from the off, I've mentioned it before, hi, I'm Kate, I'm a huge nerd, I really like Shakespeare, and I really love both reading his plays, studying them, watching them be performed. I love all of it, and so when I found the secret history with actors, I was like, hell yeah, it's exactly what I want. It is dark academia focused around theatre and Shakespeare. What more could I want? So that from the off really pleased me, was this group of 7 drama students who adore Shakespeare constantly talking about Shakespeare, and the really lengthy discussions of their performances. I was not expecting to get that from it, but a fairly prominent part of the story is about the plays that they perform in their 4th year. 4th year is for tragedies, guys, which we are told in like the first chapter, which I thought was fairly obvious foreshadowing, but I really liked it. And so the plays they perform are Macbeth at Halloween, and then Julius Caesar in, I think, at Christmas. And I must say, isn't it brilliant? An obvious uprising against a lead figure who then meets his downfall through the murder he chooses to commit. It's so obvious and brilliant. But yeah, it does a lot of lengthy description of what these performances actually are like, which I would like to one day go into theatre as a director, and so reading about how people are choosing to stage Shakespeare, even in a book, I loved it. It was so interesting, not least because I cannot not talk about the Halloween performance of Macbeth, just because it was so cool. The premise of it is that every Halloween, the drama students at Delica put on a performance of Macbeth, but they are all given their roles in secret and are told not to tell the other castmates what they have been given. So they literally turn up on the day of performance, having rehearsed and learnt their lines alone, knowing only who they are playing and not who they're playing against for anything. And I thought that was just such a cool premise that it makes me want to go out and stage some plays right now. I'm nerding out about this way too much, as I knew I would. But yeah, I think what really, really lends itself well to this book is the themes that are brought forwards with Shakespeare. As we all know, Shakespeare has very clear-cut plays, very clear-cut characters. They're so easily defined and distinguished. And so it is a very, very interesting thing for these characters, who are all individuals, obviously, but who have spent the last 4 years of their life being cast in Shakespeare plays, to have to wrangle with that identity as an actor, an individual, and the roles they always keep being cast in. So, for example, the whole class is fairly stereotyped, I will have to say. That is one of the minor downsides of the book, but they all very much have their roles. There's Richard, who is an enormous, imposing figure who always gets the big tyrannical lead roles, you know, like Macbeth and Julius Caesar, because he is obviously that kind of person. His girlfriend Meredith is the classic sort of sexy whore figure, and so she is the Lady Macbeth, the love interest. And it is really, really interesting to watch them embody who they play on stage in real life as well. And that is one of the things this book discusses, is to what extent do they blame Shakespeare for what happens? To what extent do they think that Shakespeare influenced them to make the decisions they did because they were so stuck in these roles and that was who they believed they were up to a point. And I thought that worked really, really well. I will briefly now touch on my one biggest complaint about this book, which is just, this book is written by a woman. ML Rio is a woman. I did a brief bit of research into her just because I was so interested after reading this book about her and her background. This is her first novel, and it is clearly influenced by The Secret History, which was written about 20 years prior. It hasn't really moved on very much from those misogynistic problems that The Secret History has. You know, Camilla Macaulay in The Secret History is very often referred to as a manic pixie dream girl, which I shall explain briefly just because I didn't know what that was at first, is a female character who exists purely to be a service to the male character as some kind of love interest or foil or juxtaposition from the main character. And Camilla very much is that. She serves nothing for the plot really, except that all the boys are in love with her, including her brother, which is really just like, Donata, why? And I have to be honest, If We Were Villains doesn't move a huge amount past that. We have 3 female characters and 4 male characters, which is already a bit of an improvement just because we don't have the one girl to take on all of the aspects of a woman that you need in a novel for them to function as part of the story. But instead we get a very, very clear divide with Meredith, the sexy one, Wren, the innocent one, and Philippa, the androgynous one, which still isn't really very much of an improvement. I was really pleasantly surprised by Meredith's character. She goes through a lot of development, and actually she does turn out to be much more than just the sexy one, and that is kind of why she is initially cast as just the one who does the sexy love interest roles. But I was still kind of let down by the fact that this is still set in the 90s. This was written in 2017, and we are given 3 female characters who are at best stereotypes. It did feel quite disappointing, given the male characters are all much more complex and have much more depth to them. The fact that the girl characters still end up mostly taking care of the guys, or serving as their punching bags or their love interests, it still didn't quite sit right with me. I still enjoyed this book more because the girls were more well-rounded and they did join in the group a lot more than Camilla ever did in The Secret History. But it still felt like a bit of a letdown to have such a generally improved upon version of The Secret History, in my opinion, and still end up with girls who are nothing more really than cardboard cutouts for kissing. I will also talk about briefly Oliver's relationship with Meredith and with James. I think both of these relationships are by far the most interesting ones in the book, as they should be. They are clearly set up to be the ones that you focus on. I was just fascinated. I think that Meredith as a character does so much for the overall moral greyness of the story and the general conversation about what roles we play in real life and how they fit in with how we really are and how we express ourselves was so interesting, and I thought that her relationship with Oliver was what really conveyed that the most. Because obviously they both make some stupid choices. That goes without being said. But I think that they really help to balance each other out, and I think that that was therefore one of the most interesting ones to read about, because certainly the first few times I read, you know, those conversations that happen between Meredith and Oliver in private, the first time I was reading those I was just thinking, Oliver, please don't get mixed up with her, it's gonna go badly. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I thought it was excellent. And then juxtapose that with Oliver's relationship with James, with their casual closeness, their buddy-buddy roommates thing, which, you know, I feel like it's not a spoiler for either this book or The Secret History that they both share a definitely gay, repressed narrator. And that is one of the most entertaining things about it, certainly for me. I just find it really funny reading about it because it's just like, Oliver baby. But I thought Oliver was such an interesting narrator compared to Richard in The Secret History. Richard is as boring as they come. He is as underdeveloped as Camilla, if I'm honest. Whereas Oliver has so much more interest going on about him, you know. One of the things they talk about at the start of the book is that in their 4th year, one of their drama teachers, Gwendolyn, asks them to stand up in front of the class one by one and say what their greatest strength is as an actor and what their greatest fear and weakness is as an actor. And so they all go through theirs. For example, Meredith's greatest asset is, her asset is that she's got a great body and that no one can help looking at her. But that her biggest fear is that she therefore offers nothing else to a performance other than that she is a good-looking woman in good-looking women roles. And then Oliver stands up and says that he doesn't think he has a good quality and that his biggest weakness is he just plays side characters, that he is completely undefinable and therefore offers nothing to a performance. To which James then replies that that is actually also his biggest asset because it allows him to make the other actors around him shine because he is the one providing the foundation. Oliver has actual issues that he is working through. Oliver is an actual human person as a narrator. He doesn't feel like some disembodied voice who happens to sit in on the group while they get on and do things. He is actually involved with them, he has friendships with each of them, he has interesting things to say when they're all together. He is actually a character, he actually feels like a person in this story. And that was one of the greatest things that annoyed me about The Secret History, is how can you have the most boring person of the group telling the story? it doesn't make sense. I will talk very, very briefly about the ending, because this book is set up as 5 acts, just like a Shakespeare play, with scene 1 always being something in the present day with Oliver as he has been released from prison, talking to Detective Colborne about what happened. So the whole way through the book, you get these little snapshots into the future of what it is like for Oliver returning to Delica just to talk to Detective Colborne, and what it is like for him reliving these memories as he talks about what happened that year with the death of one of his classmates. And then the ending... Can I just say, this is a 400-page book, and there are more plot twists in the last 15 pages than throughout most of the rest of it, which I'm not complaining about, because this book I think is excellently structured. But oh boy, I got punched in the gut about 4 times in a row, and was still just recovering from one plot twist when the next one happened, and was having to deal with that, and it was just... oh my god! I will... spoiler warning, just so I can freak out about it. The fact that we learn about Oliver having all these repressed feelings for James, and the fact that we find out that as soon as he realises James is the one who accidentally killed Richard, his immediate response is to defend him, and that kiss on stage really wrecked me, because although I didn't exactly think it was a healthy relationship between him and James, very much in the same vein as Richard and Francis in The Secret History, I still thought it was very, very interesting to explore that kind of repressed feeling, and thought that ML Rio did it in a much better way by actually showing there to be some chemistry between both of them. But then to find out as he's talking to Philippa and Detective Colborne that James killed himself 4 years prior, fucked me up. I was just like, we just find out that Oliver actually acted on his feelings for James and that it was reciprocated to some degree, and then find out that James killed himself. Gone. I was gone. And then when he returns to Meredith at the end of the book and she slaps him but then admittedly sort of forgives him to an extent, I was gone. And then when we find out that James is probably still alive and just faked his death, I was destroyed. I just think this book did so many things better than The Secret History, just in terms of the choice to not reveal who it is that gets killed, the choice to not reveal whether it was true murder or an accident, the choice to not reveal anything about it until the very, very end, to always keep you wondering throughout the beginning, who is it that's going to die and why do they die? I think that really serves it. I think the characters are so much better developed, albeit with the concession that the female characters are still pretty stereotyped. But generally I just think it does so many more things better than The Secret History. And it's got Shakespeare in it, which is what I really, really like. Anyway, I've actually said all I want to say. Final word, loved it. I thought this book was so good, and I would recommend it above The Secret History, if anything. I think it is just better done in so many different areas, and I think it is from a less niche aspect of dark academia. Far more people get classic literature and Shakespeare than those who get the classics, so there's my hot take. Read this instead of reading The Secret History. There you go. There's Kate's hot take for the day. But also just please read it. I really, really liked this, and I thought it was just really well done, so yeah. New favourite. I gave it 5 stars, by the way, and this is definitely going in my, list of best books I read this year. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing me rant and ramble about Shakespeare and the general plus points of this book. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you read this and what you think. Comment down below if you've also read this and The Secret History and what your thoughts were on the comparisons between the two, because that's what I'm really interested in. Subscribe if you want to hear me talk more about books I like, about Shakespeare, about dark academia. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. I do also want to say, I read some reviews. I went on Storygraph because I was interested to see how other people reacted to this story, especially in comparison with The Secret History. Oh boy, there's over 3,000 reviews on the Storygraph, but one of the most common complaints that I was seeing from people was, I don't get the Shakespeare. Like, how am I meant to enjoy it if I don't get the Shakespeare? And to which I say, okay, if you're reading this, you've probably read The Secret History. Did the passages of untranslated Latin and ancient Greek not confuse you even more? Like, I'm not trying to say that Shakespeare is really, really easy to understand, but he's not difficult to understand. He has a lot of pretty obvious things to say, and at the very least, you can spark notes a lot of what he says. You can use so many online resources to find out what he's saying, and at the very least you're probably familiar with his plays and the messages behind them, and in which case you can gain pretty much all you need to know for this book. What you really need to know is about the symbolism of Julius Caesar and Macbeth, and that is pretty much it. But also, just, you choose to read a book about pretentious arsehole actors acting Shakespeare and you have an issue with the Shakespeare? You've kind of just got to deal with it at that point, unfortunately. If you're not there for the Shakespeare in a book pretty much about Shakespeare in a modern context, then there's not a huge amount you can do about it.